In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, when the Apostle Paul was talking about his thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan, which was a man. I mean, you look at all the persecution that he just got through naming out, being given 39 stripes 5 times, beaten with rods 3 times, stoned, left for dead. I mean, he's talking about these Jews. I mean, because you look in, what was it, chapter 20 or 21, these Jews that put themselves under a curse to not eat or drink until they had killed Paul. I mean, we got to see this messenger of Satan was a man following him around, persecuting him physically. And this is because it's not talking about sickness and disease, because that's contrary to what Jesus came and showed us of God. I mean, look at how many times people didn't have faith for the deliverance from an unclean spirit or whatever that oppressed a person. I mean, he called them a faithless and perverse generation. How long shall I be with you? Because he came to show us faith. As he said in one place, he says, shall the Son of Man find faith on earth when he returns? And, you know, this goes to the weakness of the flesh, and it has nothing to do with sickness and disease. I mean, because it's talking about reproaches. It's talking about, you know, bearing our cross when someone's coming against us physically to persecute us, and picking up our cross, and not when someone smites us on one cheek, turn to him also the other. If he takes your cloak from you to give him your coat, your shirt also. You know, not to resist evil, but to overcome it with good. And this is what Jesus is saying. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. He's talking about the weakness of the flesh. And I mean, and this even has to do with fasting, because, and this is why Paul encouraged the married in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, you know, with permission from one another, because as you're married, your body doesn't belong to yourself, but to your spouse. And he says, so don't defraud one another. He says, but, you know, by permission, give yourself to fasting for a time, and then come back together, lest Satan tempt you for your incontinencies. And this is what he's talking about. I mean, because fastings are also weaken the flesh, and it also helps us in our walk. Know this from experience also. And, you know, and it has nothing to do with being justified or whatever. It just has to do with making a sacrifice of the flesh to press in the spirit. You know, and it's not something that you should be boasting about. It was like Jesus told the Pharisees, you know, my disciples will mourn whenever the bridegroom is taken from them. And, you know, also he says, don't be as the hypocrites who disfigure themselves to appear to men to fast. You know, but because some spirits don't come out of people but by fasting and prayer, as he said. That's been taken out of older manuscripts, but those are corrupted manuscripts. The Alexandrian or the Codex manuscripts are older, and they were hidden because the early believers knew they were corrupted and didn't use them. The ones that aren't as old were the ones that were worn out and recopied, and that's why they're not as old. I mean, we need to understand some of that. So having said that, for those that would have that argument, I speak that to counter that argument, because, you know, it is in the weakness of the flesh that the strength of Jesus is made perfect or complete. I mean, that's why when someone smites us on the cheek, we turn them the other, or whenever we're under persecution, his power rests upon us. I mean, so, amen. I'll just leave it at that. But we just need to understand there is a significance in our walk with God to fast and pray, because it has its place. But as Paul said to the married, he says, do it by permission from one another and for a time, and give yourself to fasting and prayer, and then come together again, lest Satan tempt you for your incontinencies. I mean, and really believers aren't walking by that today. They just act like they have power over themselves when they're married. And, it just goes to show, I mean, they don't want to submit themselves to the righteousness of God. They're going about establishing their own righteousness. They don't want to submit to a woman isn't to teach nor usurp authority over man, but then they get into this other stuff like fasting and prayer, you thinking that they have power over their own bodies. I mean, not defrauding one another when you're married, has everything to do with well, I'm not going to get into specifics, but whatever, you're just submitting yourself unto the righteousness of God. But we need to see the importance. There is a place for fasting in our life that allows us to be strengthened in the Spirit. And when we're being persecuted as well, I recognize the power of Christ resting upon me when I'm going through, when someone is coming out against me. So, amen.